We all grow up learning about poetry in school, but does anyone actually read or write it outside the classroom nowadays? Is poetry really a dead art?
A Shakespearean Sonnet 27. Weary with toil, I haste me to my bed. The dear repose for limbs with travail tired. But then begins a journey in my head to work my mind when body's work's expired. For then my thoughts from far where I abide intend a zealous pilgrimage to thee, and keep my drooping eyelids open wide, looking on darkness which the blind do see. Save that my soul's imaginary sight presents thy shadow to my sightless view, which, like a jewel hung in ghastly night, makes black night beauteous and her old face new. Lo, thus by day my limbs, by night my mind, for thee and for myself no quiet find.
I think poetry is still an alive art. Although you don't see it as much, I feel like you can still see it in your day-to-day life. Like, people still listen to music, and that's poetry in its own.
Sadly, I think that poetry might be in danger. It is a dying art. But I don't think that the art itself or the creativity is dead. It's just that the interest is not there as much anymore.
I think poetry is a dying art. I feel like it's very underrated, and because of that it's becoming less and less popular, and people really don't appreciate it much as they should.
Well, I write poetry, so usually when I'm not feeling the best, or if I am feeling the best, I tend to write that in small verses and write it myself.
Poetry means to me an escape, a way to express myself, a way to play with language. To me, language it's like a toy, right? Like that I can play around with. So poetry is in my everyday life whenever I'm inspired.
So poetry doesn't really mean anything. Poetry is just something that we have to do in English class, and it's more just something we forced to do when we have to.
A selection from Afar of London, from Annus Mirabilis, by John Dryden. Night came, but without darkness or repose, a dismal picture of the general doom, where souls distracted when the trumpet blows, and half unready with their bodies come. Those who have homes, when home they do repair, to a last lodging call their wandering friends. Their short uneasy sleeps are broke with care, to look how near their own destruction tends. Those who have none sit round where once it was, and with full eyes each wanted room require, haunting the yet warm ashes of the place, as murdered men walk once where they did expire.
Most of the earliest known poetry was a form of epic poetry, some of which dates back centuries before humans began writing down their stories. During the Renaissance period, poets got even more creative. They developed new structures and forms of meter. Playwrights like William Shakespeare incorporated poetry in their plays in what is known as verse drama. During the Romantic period, on the other hand, there was a big departure from the methods of poets during the Enlightenment. Romantic writers focused on individuality and nature and valued creativity over logic. Years and years later, the Beat generation took place in the 1950s and 60s. Poets in this period, often known as beatniks, created work which explored and influenced American culture and politics in the post-war era. Main themes within the Beat generation's poetry included rejection of standard narrative values, making a spiritual quest, the exploration of American and Eastern religions, the rejection of materialism and exploration. The beatniks began the tradition of snapping after poetry is read. Nowadays, especially, all different styles of poetry are being created by an array of individuals. The influence of each era can be seen. At Coffee Cartel, the beatnik snapping proves this, and the work read, rapped, and sung by all kinds of different people drives it home.
Hi, I'm Olivia. I come to the Coffee Cartel like every day, but I come to poetry nights every week. I write songs and poetry, and I perform both of them here, and sometimes I do covers, but mostly my own songs. Of course, with Ruby Kuar and all these young artists, I think it's only becoming a more immersive art with like social media and people sharing their poetry and art and photography all the time. I think it's the opposite of a dying art, but like a growing art. It's only becoming bigger and bigger, and the community is so vast. All of my friends I've met here at Coffee Cartel.
My name is Linda Singer, and I come here fairly frequently. I perform my poems. I have a book of poetry. I have 2 books of poetry, actually. I also have my own poetry venue in San Pedro that we meet once a month. And I feature at poetry venues all over Southern California, and they are everywhere. Poetry is not a dying art. It ain't never gonna be no dying art. Poetry has been here since, the caveman and his hand on the wall, and since speech, and it'll be here forever. People love poetry. It's not rhyming anymore, but it'll go back to that probably. It changes form, it becomes song, it becomes rap. But poetry, people are here. The room is full of people doing poetry tonight, Tuesday night, in Redondo Beach, California.
You brought me countless and restless nights just to remind me that I'm losing this fight, this battle, this war, that you dare conquer in my mind. You go by the name of Question, and oh God, I say your question in my mind, reminding me that all I want to do is fly. You ruined my mind, and the only words you allow me to say is I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. Maybe happiness comes with your night, maybe you should just end your life, because things are repeated over and over again. They don't sound as bad when they were first said. I'm conditioned to believe the words inside my head. You go by the name Depression, and you never seem to want to leave, because your main goal is seeing unhappy, because you tell me I don't deserve happiness, I'm not good enough, and I'll never get it. When it's all said and done, I really do help you have happiness, because what a waste of time would be your hardship to not.
Whether you're for or against poetry, it's still present in our world. Poetry and writing has been used by an abundance of cultures and peoples for so many reasons. Today, poetry is still used as a form of self-expression for various individuals. Now you decide. Is poetry really dead?